I guess in the early 90s it was a major surprise to most bikers that the Triumph company should be reborn. And that chapter really started in 1983 when the Bloor Group, which made a name for itself in residential house building, put a bid in for the intellectual rights of Triumph, which had been previously at Meriden. I mean, they found within a few weeks that they'd been successful in that bid. And the first project of the latest chapter started then. A small team was engaged at Exhall, not far from Coventry, to really look at all the design features of the current models at the time that was successful. A lot was learnt from that. And it soon became clear that if British manufacturer could make contemporary machines that were reliable, that there was a share of the market in each major worldwide bike markets to succeed in selling machines to those customers. I'm going to take you to the factory now, and you'll gain a better impression of how the machines are assembled, how some of the components are made internally. It'll take you through the life cycle of a bike from the machine components coming in to a bike coming off assembly and going through a rolling road.
Siegfried Bettmann, who founded Triumph, was German by birth. He came to England in 1883 to start a new life, working at first as a salesman, but by 1885 he had formed his own company selling bicycles, amongst other things. This, the first Triumph motorcycle, appeared in Bettmann's catalogue in 1902, making him without a doubt a pioneer in the new motorcycle industry, and the bike has been known ever since as number one. It had a 2.25 horsepower Belgian Minerva engine mounted at the bottom of the front down tube. This drove the rear wheel from the crankshaft by the means of a long belt. Apparently Bettmann was forced to use a European power plant, as it was considered at the time that Britain was lagging behind in engine development. This is Moritz Schulte, who was also German. Schulte, an experienced engineer, also played a major role in the Triumph story. He joined Bettmann in 1887, and while Bettmann was the man with the drive to make the company a financial success, Schulte's job was to come up with the machines to sell. This was the first all-Triumph machine produced by Schulte and Hathaway, and it went on the market in 1905. Its 3-horsepower engine, designed by Schulte, giving it a top speed of about 50 miles per hour, was probably the first reliable motorcycle engine to be produced, for he had eliminated a lot of the hit and miss out of internal combustion power plants. For an extra £5, Triumph strongly recommended that buyers should also have the Sims Bosch Magneto. Reverend B.H. Davis, the famous contributor to the motorcycle, said that the sport and business concerned with motorcycles were safe from extinction at the time by two things: the Sims Bosch Magneto and M.J. Schulte, a fine tribute to both. By 1908, engine sizes were getting bigger. Also, other developments were creeping in. This is the Triumph T500cc. Hill climbing back at the beginning of the last century was of course a problem. This Triumph began to overcome this by providing a variable pulley. This provided alternative ratios, but as the belt had to be shortened and lengthened at the side of the road, it was not very popular. However, by 1909, production at the Triumph Works was up to 3,000 per annum and growing steadily. This is the 1909 3.5 horsepower Triumph. Hill climbing was not the only problem Triumph were trying to solve in those early days. As there was little traffic about back in the early 20th century, having a direct drive by belt from the engine to the rear wheel might not have presented much of a problem, but for some, running alongside their bikes and leaping into the saddle at the appropriate moment might not have been ideal. Here in the 1910 499cc model, this problem was solved by the use of a hub clutch. To quote the Triumph catalogue, this allows the rider to start from rest while seated in the saddle. 1914 saw the beginning of the First World War, and Triumph became a major supplier to the army. This is the Type H that earned the nickname Trusty Triumph. With a 500cc engine, it was also equipped with a countershaft, Sturmey Archer gearbox with chain primary drive. The final drive, though, was still by the inevitable belt. Charles Hathaway, who had taken over the job as Triumph's designer, also added many more improvements, improving the engine breathing with bigger valves and improved cams drive gear. This gave it a top speed of 60 miles per hour. By the end of the war, over 30,000 of the Type H had been sold to the British and Allied forces, and it was not till 1925 when the Trusty was to disappear from the catalogue.
I mean, the chapter now is 18 years old, and in that period we've taken production up to 33,000 bikes. We've got a model range of about 12. I mean, we're involved in every sector of the market across the big bikes spectre. And I think in that period we've grown a very strong, young and enthusiastic team here at Hinckley. So I think we're starting to earn our true colours now.
After the war, following a disagreement between Bettman and Shorty over company policy, Shorty was forced to retire with the golden handshake of a massive £15,000. Colonel Claude Vivian Holbrook, who during the war had contracted Triumph to supply the army with motorcycles, was to fill his place. As memories of the war drifted into the past, new machines started to appear. This is the 4H Type SD. The SD stood for spring drive, as the clutch now incorporated a transmission shock absorber, and at last the belt drive had been exchanged for a chain. This is the 225cc two-stroke Baby Triumph. This machine was very popular in the countries of the British Empire, also in Europe, and sold in the thousands. Harry Ricardo, who during the war was engaged by the government to improve engine design, formed his own company after the armistice and started to build engines of such superior performance it caught the attention of those at Triumph. The result was the 500cc OHV Type R fast roadster, or as it was known to everybody at the time as the Ricky. At first, as a racer, results were disappointing, but after extensive developments, the Ricky was to collect a large number of world records, including the Flying Mile at a speed of 83.91 miles per hour, the 1 hour at 76.74 mph, and the 50 mile at 77.27 miles per hour. Harry Ricardo was later knighted for his contribution to the motor industry. The Ricky remained in the Triumph catalogue for 5 years and wasn't discontinued until 1927. And this is the model that took its place at the top of the range. This is the 500cc OHV Type TT. In 1925, Victor Horseman, a Brooklyn record breaker, was employed by Triumph to develop a brand new single. This machine, known as the Horseman, had a frame that was torsionally still, its forks robust and well sprung, and as a further addition to safety, brake drums were fitted front and rear. It also featured a speedometer which would read a top speed of about 75 miles per hour, with a comfortable cruising speed of 50 to 60, and all this for around £70. This is the 1930 CTT 500cc OHV Solo. It was introduced at the 1929 show at Olympia and was greatly admired for its new advanced design. Notice the handlebars.
The current factory is located at Hinckley. I mean, the factory was designed, believe it or not, to make 12 to 15,000 motorcycles. And in that period, we've become fairly efficient. We've taken production now up to 33,000 machines a year. We're on sale in 40 markets. We export probably 80% of what we build each year. But we now have the benefit of a new site, again in Hinckley, not a million miles from here, which will actually progressively take more and more of the manufacturing.
The 30s were to bring mixed fortunes for Triumph. The decade began badly with a string of undistinguished machines, forcing a major rethink, which culminated in the appointment of the innovative designer Val Page. It has been said that it was his imagination that brought Triumph into the modern era. and once again into world prominence with his Mark V range. These were all of modular design, which commercial benefit was gained by the sharing of common components. This 1936 2-stroke-1 250cc was the smallest model of Val Page's new range. The 250, 350 and 500 all looked pretty similar to each other, which tended to make this 250 look a little overweight. It had a 4-speed gearbox common to all the models in the range, and Page paid special attention to powerful braking. Here is one of the 500cc models in the range. This is the racing 5-stroke-10 Mark X and was probably the best pushrod single of its day, with a top speed of 100 miles an hour. It had a close ratio gearbox, steel flywheel, full race cams plus an Electron alloy engine. It has been said of this completely different 1935 vertical twin 650cc 6-stroke-1 that as it was a little ahead of its time, it was never to reach the sales figures it deserved. Reputed to be unburstable, this twin had a single camshaft at the rear of the block, operating the valves by an equal length pushrods, working in a tunnel cast in the block. The primary drive was by helical gears without an intermediate gear, so that the engine rung backwards. It was priced at around £77. And this is the 1936 experimental 500cc vertical twin. By the mid-30s, the world was caught up in the Depression, and despite Val Page's new range of machines, Triumph, like so many other companies, was in financial trouble. It was decided that to save the company it would be necessary to put the motorcycle side of the